Well, the president's toughest Republican critic takes a new swing at the president's foreign policy. Speaking to the Washington Post, he expressed concern that the president was inviting, as he put it, binary situations, such as choosing between war and in North Korea or Iran with nuclear weapons. The problem, Senator Bob Corker told the Post, is that the president, in his words, has neutered his Secretary of State. You cannot publicly castrate your own Secretary of State, he says, without giving yourself that binary choice. The tweets, yes, you raise tension in the region and it's very irresponsible, but it's the first part, he says, the castration of Tillerson, that I am most exercised about. Senator Bob Corker's new remarks came to light at the end of a day that saw President Trump taking action on the Iran nuclear deal.
Today I am announcing our strategy, along with several major steps we are taking to confront the Iranian regime's hostile actions and to ensure that Iran never, and I mean never, acquires a nuclear weapon.
What he did was decertify the agreement and raise the possibility of pulling out of it entirely. The move allows Congress to impose new sanctions on Iran with a simple majority vote. As for why, he said that Tehran is not living up to the spirit of the accord. Keep in mind, top members of his national security team are on record recently striking a different note.
Iran is not in material breach of the agreement, and I do believe the agreement to date has delayed the development of a nuclear capability by Iran.
My view on the nuclear deal is they are in technical compliance of the nuclear arrangement.
Do you believe it's in our national security interest at the present time to remain in the JCPOA? That's a yes or no question.
Yes, Senator, I do.
His secretaries of defense, state, and the Joint Chiefs Chairman, the UN inspectors monitoring the deal, also say Iran is in compliance. And while it's true that Iran has an active missile program and supports terror groups around the world, the nuclear deal wasn't drawn up to address any of that. So there's lots to talk about tonight. Joining us is Fareed Zakaria, host of CNN's Fareed Zakaria GPS, and Mike Duran, the senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and former senior director of the National Security Council during the George W. Bush administration. Fareed, first of all, from Bob Corker himself saying you cannot publicly castrate your own Secretary of State, are you as concerned about that as the senator?
Well, I think it's very clear now that we essentially have no diplomacy going on in the United States. And the way in which the president has treated his Secretary of State is the most dramatic example of it. I remember James Baker, George Bush Sr.'s Secretary of State, Ronald Reagan's Chief of Staff and Secretary of Treasury, telling me once, the most important quality you need in a Secretary of State is not knowledge of the world, not smarts. It is that he have the trust and confidence of the president. Because when you go around the world and you're trying to make deals and you're trying to do diplomacy, the only thing anyone around the world is wondering, do you speak for the president? Do you have the trust and confidence? Are you speaking for the entire government of the United States? And it's absolutely clear that Rex Tillerson is not. And in that circumstance, he's sort of a dead man walking, whether he's in his job or not, because there's no diplomacy going on. Nobody believes he speaks for the government. The president publicly points out that he disagrees with his own Secretary of State. So it's sort of odd to imagine how this man could go around the world trying to negotiate. Who is going to make a deal with him? Who is going to give him an assurance when they know that his own president doesn't agree with him?
Mike, I want to turn back to the Iran deal announcement. I know you were no fan of the deal, but does it concern you at all that outside observers, European allies, even those in the president's administration, simply do not back up what he contends?
Yes and no. I don't think the president made this decision to decertify on the basis of technical compliance with the deal. I think the administration would say that they're not in the breaches that the Iranians have carried out they're not the problem. The problem is that the deal has strengthened Iran around the region, and we don't have a strategy for dealing with the totality of the threat that Iran represents.
Fareed, President Trump talked about, a number of major issues that the U.S. has with Iran, that they finance terror, they foment violence in Iraq, they imprison Americans. He's not wrong about any of that. Do those things have anything to do with this deal?
Anderson, imagine if Vladimir Putin had announced the day after the Iraq war that because the United States was destabilizing the Middle East, he was going to abrogate and pull out of all the arms control agreements that the United States had signed with Russia. it's not only completely illogical, it would be the upending of any kind of international order or framework. If other countries were to do what the United States just did, we would have chaos in the world. Of course, Iran is doing things we disagree with. Of course, Saudi Arabia is doing things we disagree with. Lots of countries are doing things we disagree with. But international agreements are signed for a specific purpose, and as long as you are maintaining that piece of that part of the puzzle, it has to be upheld. The president himself said in his speech that Iran was in technical compliance with the deal. He himself said they are not violating the letter of the deal because by saying they're violating the spirit of the deal. Well, everybody has their own interpretation of what the spirit of the deal is. But if every country in the world decided that they're going to start linking all these issues like this and abrogating deals willy-nilly, abrogating promises they've made, you would have no international order. This is something that goes far beyond the Iran deal. This is a question of whether the United States is going to keep its word on a deal that it admits the other party has not broken.
Mike, what do you make of Fareed's perspective?
First of all, President Obama made this deal against the will of the American people and against the majority opinion in Congress. So this deal wasn't something that was ratified by Congress and is the pillar of an order. It wasn't even. It was never even signed by anyone. The Iranians insist that this is not any kind of binding agreement themselves. So let's not turn this into a pillar of international order. And then secondly, let's talk about what
Mike, if I may, the majority of America didn't vote for Donald Trump, but we follow the rules we have. The rules are that the president is allowed to make agreements like this. If you want to talk about whether or not the majority of the country was behind it, well, the majority of the country wasn't behind Donald Trump. I still accept him as president.
Donald Trump won the presidency by the rules of our election system, our electoral system, and he has the right, just as Barack Obama has the right to make deals with Iran without running it through Congress. Donald Trump has the right to change it. What Trump has done here is offered Congress and offered our allies the ability to come together on a strategy to take care of the totality of the Iranian threat. That's an opportunity. That's not a problem.
Is it an opportunity for it?
Look, what he's done is essentially create complete incoherence. Because on the one hand, he attacks the policy bitterly, and then he says, well, I'm going to stay in it. I'm going to punt this to Congress, to a deeply divided Congress, and force them to clean up. It's an abrogation of responsibility. It is an entirely irresponsible act. If the president wants to walk away from the deal, I agree with Mike that he has the technical right to do so. I'm simply saying it's a terrible idea and it undermines U.S. credibility, but he does have the legal right to do it. But he won't even do that. It's an act of strange cowardice, producing a kind of incoherent foreign policy. Well, on the one hand, he says the deal is the worst thing in the world, and on the other hand, he says, but I'm going to stay in it. Congress can decide what to do.
Give him some credit for flexibility and for opening up negotiations with the Europeans and with Congress. Now, he didn't just go out.
There are no negotiations with the Europeans. The Europeans have said they will not renegotiate the deal.
He did not simply go out and abrogate the deal. So he took a position between those who were saying walk and those who are saying fix the deal.
All right.
I want to hear what you think we can do to make this deal actually better, and what we can do about the Iranian aggression in the region. Complaining about Donald Trump isn't going to take care of those problems.
Isolating the United States and making Iran the victim won't help.
Turning our backs on our allies.
They can play the aggrieved victim.
Turning our backs on our allies in the Middle East, the Israelis, the Saudis, the Turks, and others, was what isolated the United States.
All right, we got to leave it there. Mike Duran, thank you, Fareed Zakaria, as well. When we come back, the president.